But obviously in these times it's prudent to think of how to be safe, and I'm sure you'll recognize what this is. Just in case you don't know, this is an Essex sewing machine, and I'm sure you know what I'm sewing. I'm of course making some face masks. Now, face masks are going to be probably compulsory. They're certainly worn by a large number of people. So my wife had the idea, why don't she have some bits of material, and here they are, a collection of bits and pieces like this. And she's also very keen on designer clothing. So she said, why don't we have designer masks? So I said, brilliant, boss. I pulled out my Essex, and here it is. And here we've started working on some of the designer masks. So this one here, you see, this is going to be called the Paradise. This one here, you see, is going to be called the Yachtsman or the Sailor. This one here is going to be called the University Professor. So the DT department was producing soap on a large scale before the end of term. AutoSoc is now producing face masks for friends, relatives, and pupils, of course, as well. So please stay in touch on that front. Now, one of the reasons why I wanted to show you this Essex sewing machine, it was produced, by the way, between the 1940s and 1950s, is because it has a beautiful mechanism by which it operates. And what I'm going to do is to allow it, I'm going to it is actually held here by a clamp to the table, and I'm going to actually turn it around a little so that perhaps you could see a little better. Now, what it's got epicyclic gears. The gear wheel, which you can see there, is an epicyclic gear wheel. Now, those gears are used in automatic gearboxes in cars, and they're also used in the hub gears of Sturmey Archer bicycles. Oh, they're old-fashioned. You don't see much of those today. Now, why are epicyclic gears used at all? They're also known as planet and sun gears, because they occupy little space and it's very easy to change gears as well. So vast majority of automatic cars will have these types of gears. Now, in addition to that, you see a beautiful mechanical arrangement. These sewing machines are very cheap on eBay, by the way. For about £50 you can get one of these. They're beautiful mechanisms. They illustrate the principles of mechanical engineering. They're made of wonderful materials, and above all, of course, they are perfectly good in an emergency situation like we have now for making face masks. Now, there are three types of movements which this demonstrates as well, which are found in motor car engines as well, and that is, of course, reciprocating motion, which is the up and down motion there. Linear motion is, of course, it moves in a straight line, and rotational motion as I turn my wheel around. So there it is then. This is just a very, very short demonstration and introduction to the sort of things that we can get involved in AutoSoc. Now, we're now going to move out into the garden, where I will be demonstrating for you some of the apparatus and equipment that we have, and telling you some of our gardening stories from the past few weeks. But before we do that, I wanted to issue you with a word of advice. I am going to show you one or two experiments involving combustion, showing how petrol burns, how engines operate. I wanted to tell you that these experiments are very, very dangerous to conduct if you don't know what you're doing. I shall be dealing with petrol, which is a highly flammable substance and should never, ever be burnt outside of an internal combustion engine. Now, I have to tell you that the reason why I'll be doing these is obviously to educate you, but also to let you know that I am very highly qualified in this field. So just to give you the thing, I have a master's degree in industrial safety. One of my speciality fields was actually extinguishing fires and the design of buildings to withstand fires. And also, I have just recently, on February the 12th, I gave a lecture to 100 professional firefighters on the combustion of wood. When I gave that lecture, it was the Institution of Fire Engineers. I was given a special badge like this in an acknowledgement of my contribution. So I'm just showing you this not to show off, But just to let you know that I am a professional, I do know what I'm talking about, and all the experiments that you're going to be seeing have been carefully adjusted and have been carefully tested to illustrate the principles. So please make sure, don't under any circumstances ever attempt any kind of burning experiments with petrol. You're more than welcome, by the way, to ask me questions and to come and watch me or do them with me in chemistry club. We could do all of this sort of stuff under controlled conditions. So I'm going to invite you now outside. Oscar is helping me, he's filming, and I'm going to introduce you to our stories from gardening in the past few weeks. Oscar, can you go first, please? Oscar's going to now go. We're going to go into the garden, and I'm going to start off by showing you a problem which we had. Now, Oscar, can we stop here, please? Because I wanted to show the tree from here. So I wanted to start off by telling you that we have had a significant problem in our garden for a few years, and that is this beautiful tree which you can see, which is it's a horse chestnut, which is 130 years old, but you see it's lost its crown of leaves. There are very, very few leaves on the top of the tree. They've started to fall off, and we in fact know that this tree is now on its way out. It's dying. Now, as a result of that, on September the 16th last year, a huge branch fell off and crashed into our garden and occupied the whole width of the garden. And it was one of my greatest challenges was to find the time and the equipment with which to remove this log and to saw it up. I'm going to invite you now to the bottom of the garden where I will show you how I dealt with this. So follow me, Oscar, and we'll show everyone how we managed to deal with a very, very large log that was lying across the garden. So if we could just stop here, have a closer look at the tree from here, Oscar. You'll see this is the back of our garden. You'll see the branches are, some of them are leaning out at very, very angles which are not consistent with a healthy tree because they're going downwards. And as I said, on September the 16th, a huge piece of this tree fell down and occupied a significant portion of this garden. It roughly occupied this area here, which I'm showing you, which is along here where you can see all these white wood chippings. So I'm going to now explain to you the story of how we tackled this issue. So it was at the beginning of the current lockdown that I said, Oscar, we'll do some gardening together, we'll do some grass cutting, and we'll do some log chopping. So I said, would you like to learn how to use petrol-driven gardening equipment? So Oscar said, yeah, you know, anything for a laugh, let's try it out, let's give it a go. So I said, Oscar, I've got two pieces of equipment I want you to use. One of them is the lawnmower, which I have here, and the other is the chainsaw. They're both petrol driven, and I said to Oscar, I'm going to teach you how to start them up and how to use them. Now, for the first evening, when we attempted to start them up, I said, Oscar, we've got two of these. They're not that easy to start, but I'm sure we'll get a result, especially with the petrol-driven lawnmower, because every year when I use it, it starts up first time. And you know what happened? Absolutely nothing. Oscar was trying to start this up for 15 minutes. I tried to start. Absolutely nothing happened. I then tried to start up the chainsaw. Again, I spent another half hour. Again, absolutely nothing happened. So I thought this is a complete disaster. Here is me trying to impress Oscar how to use these, and I can't even start them up myself. So, and I was particularly surprised because this machine here, it starts up first time after a break every year. So I just could not work that out. So I then had to strip down some bits and pieces. It's got one spark plug which operates with a spark. It's got one piston, one cylinder, and I cleaned that up. It was all in perfect condition. Couldn't fathom it out at all. I cleaned up the bits and pieces of that. Again, the chainsaw had been fully serviced by my very good friend Jonathan Ryder, and also by Nihal in the DT department. So I had two people who were experts on machines fully servicing. So I said, there's no point in phoning them up, Szydlo, you've got to do it yourself. So what I did was, I did something very unusual, and with respect to this one here, I actually phoned up people that actually repair these, and I said, look, I've got a lawnmower, it normally works, it's a Briggs & Stratton, it's a very, very good make, and it's not starting, can you give me some advice? And they said, look, probably you've got stale petrol in there. So I said, okay, that's interesting. I said, that's weird. But I said, normally after a year it starts. But they said, well, try it again. You have a go to put new petrol, etc. Do you know what? That did the trick. I actually put fresh petrol in, 4-star, unleaded, bingo, it went off absolutely like a dream. I couldn't believe it. So by the way, it took me about 3 or 4 consecutive evenings of spending half an hour trying to start this before I got the result. So that was a phenomenal success. I then started it up. I'm going to start it up now just to show you, and then I will wheel it out of the way and we'll concentrate on the chainsaw. So to start this up, you grip this handle. This is a brake, by the way. That's now got the brake on, the brake for the motor, that is. And we pull it like this, and then you give a couple of tugs. You have to actually prime it first of all. You prime it with some petrol. You give it a couple of squeezes. There's a little carburetor in there. Give it a tug. There we are. So that's the petrol-driven lawnmower in action. Now with a chainsaw, things were much more difficult. I had to clean it up. I had to take the spark plug out. I had to have a good look at it, etc. Try and work out what the problem was. And in the end, it turned out that it was also the new petrol. I required the new petrol for this. So I started this up eventually and I got this to work. But before I show you how the chainsaw works, but actually let me show you the chainsaw first, just in case it doesn't start up. These are very, very difficult to start up. And I have to tell you also, these are very, very dangerous machines. Only adults should ever use them, and you have to wear a hat, a hard hat, you have to wear goggles, and you have to wear gloves and Wellington boots, preferably leather on this as well, just in case this catches against you. So once again, I say this, by the way, this is a very, very good machine. It's a Husqvarna 254. I bought this for 200 quid on eBay about 15 years ago, knowing that one day I'll be sawing logs. That day has arrived. And you know yourselves, if you want someone to come and chop some logs up for you in your back garden, don't even bother phoning them up. It'll be 500 quid just the call out fee, and then things start to gather up. So you can phone up Terry, the tree surgeon. He'll come, he'll tell you everything's wrong and it's safety and all the rest of it, and you'll end up losing a lot of money. I thought, Szydlo, auto sock, man made it, man can fix it, we shall get on with the job. So let me now put on a few bits and pieces of safety equipment. I'm just going to put my gloves on, my gauntlets on here, and also a pair of safety goggles. And Oscar, I'll ask you to zoom in a bit to show the images of me cutting. Well, first of all, I'm going to start it. Now, starting these is very, very difficult, and they're very temperamental, and it may not start first time, but I'll do my best. I have just warmed it up, by the way, so with a bit of luck, it should start fairly straightforwardly. So we give it a strong tug on the string here, like that. There we are, and we're off the mark. And we're off the mark. So now you see, we have everything still working, and is that okay? Yeah. And now I'm going to cut along with it. So excuse me while I go around the corner. Now, to turn it off, we just place it down there. You notice that came surprisingly close to my face at one stage. You should really be wearing a full visor for this. However, this was just a very short demonstration, and it's illustrated the principle. I'm sure you won't dispute the fact that was pretty impressive. And the log fell off, obviously, because the balance had been disturbed. Now, just tell you a little bit about these petrol-driven engines which we have here. This, you see, by the way, I've got a piece of the log. The logs I was sawing were for the branch. They had this diameter. This is a very, very considerable piece of wood, you see, and there's no way you could have chopped up a log with this diameter just with a hand saw, or even with several people helping. It would have taken days on end and it wouldn't have been worth it. So that, you see, I've managed to slice up. We have several dozen slices of wood like this made, as you see, very remarkably with that. Now, just a little bit about what sort of motors these have. You see the lawnmower motor, the Briggs and Stratton, that is what's known as a 4-stroke engine, and that is the type of engine that you have in motor cars. This, however, is a 2-stroke motor, 2-stroke engine here. So 4-stroke, 2-stroke, what's the difference between them? Well, a 2-stroke basically has power delivered to it every time the piston goes up and down. It goes up one, etc. And every time it goes up and down, the fuel inlet and the exhaust outlet are both in the cylinder of the engine. So as the piston goes up and down inside the cylinder, it opens and closes the vents to allow petrol and oil in, because petrol is mixed with oil in this one, and in this one and as the position of the piston changes, so in goes the fuel, out goes the exhaust. And this is, and every time it goes up, it gets a power stroke, it gets a spark from the spark plug, which is made by a magneto which turns around inside here. Now that then is what that then enables the engine to work, and these 2-stroke motors have a huge amount of power. They're twice as powerful as the 4-stroke engine, because the 4-stroke motor only receives its power every 2nd stroke. They're quite a bit more complicated mechanically as well. This is a more simple device mechanically, but it's one of its downsides. It's very heavy on petrol. It uses up a lot of petrol. So this then is and this, by the way, this is 4 horsepower. This has one hell of a kick to it when you're using it, and as I say, you do have to have a little practice, but once you get the hang of it, it really is very, very straightforward, and as you saw, it's in fact quite a pleasure to use. The 4-stroke engine, on the other hand, is like a conventional motor car engine. Every cylinder has 2 valves. The valves, which are one is for allowing inlet of petrol, the other one is for allowing for the exhaust to go out, and they are controlled by a cam. So there are more moving parts far more moving parts in that, but ultimately that is fuel efficient, much more fuel efficient, and those are the types of engines that we use on motor cars today. I'm now going to show you, having explained to you just a little bit about the differences between these two types of engine. And as I said, if anyone does want to come in at school, we've got full motor car engines which have been dismantled, and we have a huge diesel engines in the DT department. So we'll be very, very happy to show you the entire functioning of these engines, and indeed we could even show you these operating under, if you'd like to see those working as well. Now, having shown you then the success which we achieved, as I said, this did take quite a little time, I'm now going to show you how petrol burns inside a motor car engine, because petrol, you see, is a fuel which has been known for thousands of years. Oscar, I'm now going to take up my position on the bench, so if you could zoom in a little bit so that the students can see. Oh, by the way, another thing I wanted to show you, which is quite a remarkable thing, and that's what's happened to one of the logs, and in fact some of the logs. And this log which I have here, which I personally just cannot believe this one was chopped about 6 weeks ago, and just look what's happened. It started growing again. Personally, I find this absolutely beyond belief. Look at that, a chopped log. It should all be dead. No, sir. Wood doesn't die that quickly. Things don't die that quickly. In nature, there are phenomenally powerful forces, living vital forces, which enable things to live. So look, this has grown its own branch. Beautiful cluster of leaves here. This is not going to last for long, but at least it's growing. So that, for me, is an example. I'm hoping to see maybe there'll be some flowers or conkers eventually. I have no idea, but I think this is so beautiful. I just wanted to tell you about this. I'm going to ask you now, Oscar, to very carefully, let's place our log very carefully down there, and to zoom in now. And here I'm now going to prepare for you a demonstration of how petrol burns inside a motor car engine. So I'm going to do this. I have prepared a few bits and pieces. You must allow me to set them up. I have a special board here, like this, excuse me. I have a metal sheet, a sheet of steel, a mild steel. That's the sort of thing, as you know, we all have in our spare workshops, bits of steel kicking around. And I'm going to put my safety goggles on now, and then I'm going to just brush off the bit of sawdust here, and now I'm going to show you some petrol. Now here's the petrol. You see, now you will know that modern cars and this type of engine that I've been demonstrating to you today is a modern invention. This type of engine is called an internal combustion engine. They were invented about 130 years ago. However, substances similar to petrol have been known for thousands of years. And why is that? Well, because in certain parts of the world, especially in the Arabic countries, in China, in India, there occur under the ground, there comes out of the ground a dark liquid. Now, they used to call it black smelly water in the olden days, but today we know, of course, that this is called crude oil. But we know also, and people have always been very interested in things, you know, they see something new, they say, what's that, can I do something with it? So they did experiments, and someone would have come up, like somewhere a couple of thousand years ago. Venezuela's another country, by the way, South America, where this black smelly water comes out of there. They put their finger and say, ugh, horrible. They do some experiments. They would try burning it, boiling it, etc. And we know for sure that already 10,000 years ago, the process of distillation was being practiced by, actually 2,000, sorry, I'm making a slight exaggeration. It was 10,000 years that filtration was developed. 2,000 years ago, people were already distilling. And we know that they would have obtained substances very similar to petrol already 2,000 years ago. So they would have got something like this. They would have got what we call a distillate. By the way, how did we know this? Because we've actually found distillation apparatus buried underground. Archaeologists have discovered, for example, alembics, which were ceramic pots with tubes on them, which were used in the Arab culture. I am now going to show you then, had someone been doing an experiment like this, an experiment just for the fun of it, seeing how things burn, how petrol would burn if you just wanted to burn. Now, as I said, they didn't call it petrol, they just called it a liquid which was produced from an oil and from their black smelly water. I'm going to set some of this on fire. Now I'm going to do this. I have a small quantity of petrol. If you don't mind, actually I'm going to take off this glove. Sorry, I'm going to be very careful to make sure. I'm going to take the cork off. I'm going to pour some petrol over this, and then I'm going to set fire to it. Now I'm sure you will be able to predict with ease how it's going to burn. And I repeat once again, this is not the sort of experiment anyone should ever be undertaking on their own. So I'm just going to pour some petrol out here. Just watch it go there. There it is, just a little trail there. And we're just allowing that to evaporate a little bit. If you don't mind, I'm putting the top on my petrol there. I'm now going to put my gauntlets on, because they need to be worn for this, and rapidly, because otherwise the petrol will evaporate. It's a volatile liquid, and then we shall just set fire to it. So please watch carefully. And there it is, there's our petrol burning, you see. Now, I'm sure you'll all agree, I'll bring it up closer to the camera so you can see it better, just in case. There we are, and now you can see petrol. Now, the point to note, it's burning with an incredibly yellow and smoky flame. Now, this process, as you know, is called incomplete combustion. No one would ever use this type of burning to propel something, or for it to heat, to give light, to give heat for for making food, etc. And for thousands of years, until one of the greatest discoveries of science, no one ever used petrol for anything. It was just too smelly and too smoky. They used other vegetable oils were used preferentially, and they also used waxes of various kinds for burning, and of course wood and coal and so forth. I am now going to show you, by means of this tin can here, how petrol actually burns inside a motor car engine. And the way I'm going to do it is to ignite a small sample in here. Now I'm going to start off by telling you that about 250 years ago, one of the greatest discoveries of the whole world of science was made. And that discovery was that air is a mixture of gases. Now, air was then known to contain, it was discovered that air contains approximately 20% oxygen and 80% nitrogen. And since that great discovery, people have been exploiting the oxygen which is present in air to obtain a process which we call complete combustion. The inside, all of these engines which you've seen, the lawnmower, the chainsaw, motor car engines, jet engines, diesel engines, combustion devices, central heating system, anywhere where you see these, you will always, the fuel has been pre-mixed carefully with the air in order to get the process of complete combustion. I'm going to try and achieve this in this can here. Now, if I was going to say to anyone, oh, what do you know, what's inside this can? Obviously the can's empty, but you see, it's full of air. It's empty from paint, but it's full of air. And in this can, by the way, I hope you can see there is a hole in the bottom of that can. As I've explained to you just now, the petrol inside the chainsaw, inside the lawnmower, that's ignited by a spark, which is spark plugs, genius invention of the science of physics. I am going to simply ignite that by placing a match under the bottom. Now, to do this, I'm going to now, this is full of air, and as I said, it was the scientists, the chemists who exploited this usage of air for better combustion. I'm going to squirt a few drops, there are some drops there, of petrol in here, just a few more, there we are, just like that there. Now rapidly put the cork on the bottle here. Now I'm going to very carefully place my bottle on the ground, and now I have to put the lid on. Now the lid, I'm going to whack it on with my fist to make it sure that it's made a tight fit like that, you see. And now I'm going to do something very important. I'm going to warm up this can with my hands and also with my face, with my cheek like this. Now the purpose of doing this is to cause a very important change to occur to the petrol. And that change is not a chemical change, it's not burning, it's not changing into another substance. It is a physical change. It's a change of state. The petrol is changing inside this can from the liquid state to the gaseous state. As it changes from the liquid state to the gaseous state, it forms what we call an homogeneous system with the air, and it's fully mixed in with the air. Let's now see how this burns and see what effect it has on the tin. I'm just going to have a quick sniff. Yep. That's a fairly strong smell. Hopefully I have put in enough petrol and evaporated it sufficiently in order to get the petrol to ignite. So I'm now going to strike a match, put it under the hole, and hopefully you will see an effect which will demonstrate how petrol burns inside internal combustion engines. I don't know whether you saw that, but I certainly didn't. But I hope you did. You saw the lid went flying somewhere high up into the tree, and no one will dispute that, by gum, that was a pretty large amount of energy released in a very short space of time. And therefore, this type of combustion, you see, is only possible thanks to one of the greatest discoveries of science, and that discovery is air is a mixture of gases. Having then showed you now a little bit about internal combustion engines, which we use in automobiles, I'm now going to turn to the final part of the demonstration, and that is simply how we've been exploiting our time during this period where we can't go too far from our houses. Well, we have this tree in the back of our garden, which is a 130-year-old chestnut, but in the front of our garden we have a tree which is a lime tree. Now that lime tree has got branches growing out every 3 years. We have to prune it of branches which stick out to the top, which grow like this. And every 3 or 4 years, I get up on the ladder and I go with my handsaw. You don't use a chainsaw on branches like this with a handsaw. And it takes quite a long time. But this year, Oscar was around, so I said, Oscar, could you hand? So Oscar basically did the majority, he trimmed them. Now there are about 120 of these bits of wood. Now, being a sort of person who never, if you've made all the effort to cut this wood down, it's a terrible shame to throw it away. You see, we've had to put some onto the garden recycling. But the point is, I said, said, I discussed with my wife, I said, boss, what can we do of usefulness with this wood? So she said, she looked around and she said, yeah, we got lots and lots of straight bits of wood. Well, let's build something for the compost heap. She wants, let's make a compost heap enclosure. You see, we've had this horrendous compost heap thing made out of plastic for the last 15 years. So my wife said, why don't we make a compost heap using this wood? So I am now going to allow Oscar to finish off the demonstration. I am now going to come and act as the cameraman. Oscar is going to show you how we achieve this. So, Oscar, could you start moving things then out of the way, and then just move the various bits and pieces. So, what the first trick is, Oscar, could you just show everyone how we used the scissors, the shears rather. See, these are garden shears, by the way, and we have a very, very nice neighbour called Tim who explained to us that you could use one of these, which is much more effective than the other ones, because it's got a ratchet on it. So that means, Oscar, could you just cut through a bit of that tall one there, just to show how the ratchet works on it? Okay, just not right there, a bit just up here, just to show the principle. So I'm just going to hold up. It's just, so what you draw it tight, and then it ratchets up. You could hear that clicking. Isn't that amazing? So that's how to use one of those. Oscar will now show, so can you pick up those 3 bits of wood down there? I'm sort of holding the camera now and talking, Oscar. So Oscar's now going to show how, you see, because I had to, Oscar, could you show one up? I just hold it up so I can show it to everyone. So see, my wife was saying, how on earth can you knock this into the ground? You know, well, I said, boss, you know, you need a sledgehammer and something, but she said, shouldn't we do something else? I said, well, you know, you can sharpen the ends. If you sharpen the ends, then it should dig in easier. So I'm just going to ask Oscar to sharpen up a couple of these and show you how he's been using his skills, which he's learnt on scout camps. Oscar is a scout, and indeed I'm a scout as well. And in the scouting, when you go on various camps, you pick up a whole load of skills, which you sort of, not the sort of things you could pick up at school, you see. So Oscar's just going to sharpen up a couple of these, and then we'll show you a few more that he's made. And there is, he's knocking it in there, you see. There we are, and I'm going to get you to, once you've sharpened it, Oscar, just to bring it up close to the camera so we can show everyone. But very important, by the way, to have a sharp axe and to have a good log on which to do it. You know, the tools of the trade are absolutely the most important things. In addition, though, you have to have basic manipulative skills. So if you've got skills, if you enjoy doing craft and enjoy making things, that's what Auto Sock's about, then this is it. So Oscar, just hold it up there. So there you see a sharpened point there, and that is now ready to be. Oscar, could you just show us a few more that you sharpened up earlier? Just hold up a bunch of them. Hold up a bunch of them there. And there it is, a whole load more that he made. So there it is, those are the things. Now, to knock them in, we used, by the way, a 25 kilogram sledgehammer. So 25, yeah, it's a 25 pounder. There it is. It's a very significant sledgehammer. That, again, requires a lot of skill. And for my very final image, I'm going to show you the result. And here it is, a beautiful enclosure for compost. And with this image, I bid you all a very farewell. Nothing better to finish with than a compost heap.